Welcome to week 7. I'm going to share a little bit of insight from our reading chapter 7 and 8 of our text, but I'm also going to offer a few notes from other parts of the book. Not required reading, but if you have the time, I encourage you to read the entire book and share it with someone. I find that the book, the author does a great job of sharing insightful information, but also actionable information, things that should be of interest to anyone responsible for social media. All right, so first up, we understand that providing personal information in exchange for the use of social media sites involves risks, right? You got to give something to get something. Know what these are for you and your organization, but don't operate under a blanket of fear. We have to accept some risk as part of doing business. You mitigate those risks that you know exist and develop a contingency plan to respond to those risks that you may not know are out there. Number 2, don't be the news. This is great advice for any public relations person, great advice for any leader. It means think first and be smart in all you do. Behave on social media the same way you would behave in front of important people in your life, managers, colleagues, parents, teachers, grandparents, etc. If you wouldn't say it or do it in front of these people, don't do it on social media. I used to train senior leaders in the Navy, and the 3 things I would tell them is you want to make sure before you say it, write it, or even think it, that you don't want to disappoint or share it in a way that's inappropriate with Betty, Boris, or Barbara. Betty Warren was my first protocol officer. She was kind of like a grandmotherly figure to most of us junior officers, and you never wanted to disappoint Betty, right? Boris, back when I first came into the Navy, we were in the Cold War, Boris Yeltsin with the Soviet Union. You don't want to share anything that's classified. For most of you, that won't be an issue, but there may be some secrets within your own organization, proprietary information that you don't want to share. And then finally, Barbara Starr. Barbara Starr, some of you may know, is the CNN correspondent at the Pentagon. Worked with her and the other Pentagon correspondents when I was a Pentagon press officer. You know, that's public information. We have a responsibility to share that information in a responsible way. And the last thing you want is for you or as a public affairs professional or you as a leader to say or do something that's going to bring discredit upon your organization. Okay, next, the Federal Trade Commission regulates advertising in the United States, and they use what's known as a clear and conspicuous legal standard. Now, lots of legal issues surrounding that. Don't get lost in the details. Just understand that you have a responsibility as a communicator to be transparent and ethical in all communication, and that communication includes social media. All right, we're not required to read Chapter 10, but you might want to review it. I think that the thought leader perspective from Craig Newmark includes some interesting perspective on the history of blogging. You may know Craig Newmark as the founder of Craigslist, so he's got a lot of credibility in terms of blogging and the online, especially the early days of online retail. Also in the same chapter, you can read the social media guidelines from organizations. One of the organizations I like is National Public Radio, or NPR, their social media guidelines. They're similar to most social media guidelines I've seen for news organizations. Among other things, the guidelines treat online behavior, quote, just as you would in any other public circumstance. And that's key. I think a lot of people hide behind this anonymity or perceived anonymity of having face-to-face communication, and they do it in social media. We shouldn't do that, especially as professional communicators. You treat others fairly, honestly, and always, always with respect. Also, make sure that you verify any information that you pass along. Once you share it, you are responsible for it, okay? So keep that in mind, especially if you're representing your organization, but that's also good advice in your personal use of social media. Chapter 11, our author shared common social media practices along with top free social media monitoring tools. Look at the list. That list is ever evolving because we always come up with new tools. But find a few that work for you and see if you want to play with them. If they work for you, great. If not, you may want to look for other options. But there are plenty of tools out there to help with social media monitoring. One thing to note is that social media best practices require users to go beyond just attracting followers and fans, right? So that's kind of base level. It's interesting, but it's not declarative. It's not going to get you past first base, right? If we're trying to make it all the way home to which is our goal in terms of our strategic goals and whatever it is that we're trying to achieve within our organization, we want a home run eventually, right? Or we want to make it around and score a point at home plate. And we do that not just by the base level. You got to get past that and look more deeply in terms of engagement. And we've talked a little bit about this as we've gone through the term. It can be argued, I guess, that the quality of interaction is really much more important than numbers over time. And I say I guess because it's hard, right? Especially for those who may not understand public relations or may not be involved in professional communications. We report to bosses who they understand hard numbers, right? When the CFO or chief financial officer, when she brings in that balance sheet, right? When they bring in those records, that's hard data. It's easy to understand. Are we making a profit or are we not? And so some of those numbers are important. Just make sure that you also look at the quality of the numbers as well. All right. Stay ahead with your assignments. Most of you are doing a phenomenal job with that. I applaud you for doing so. Stay engaged in that discussion board. Love, love, love the discussion that I'm seeing. And then, of course, always enjoy your time of learning.